Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but specifically the topic for today is pictures of fantastic locations are lazy. Really? They are lazy? I did not think they were. But anyway, so is the use of pictures or images of fantastic locations, is that a lazy way of operating as a dungeon master? Well, sometimes we're not all really good at art. Not always good at drawing out a picture of our own, or we don't have time. Even if we are, reasonable at turning out a picture and an image of a location that we want to sort of present to our players, we're not very good at that. And we've also got limited time, so we've got to try and get it all together and still run our game. So, is it lazy to use images and pictures? Well, yes, it is lazy. It certainly is. But it's also extremely smart. And I'll explain to you why I think it's a smart way to go. And certainly not for every dungeon master, I understand, but I feel like it is a good way of communicating a lot of information very quickly. You know the saying, a picture tells 1,000 words, or whatever you want to say, something like that. So pictures communicate a lot of information without having to make any kind of notes or say anything. You really don't have to say very much to a player or the character in any way, because the image itself has presented so much information already. And that kind of information can be with regard to structures, floors, walls, maybe a building or a number of buildings, the environments, the nature of the environments, any kind of hazards that might be actually visible currently, the type of light source we're dealing with, if it's dim light, dark, or it's brightly lit. Often a lot of the dimensions of that location are also communicated in the image. Now you might find yourself having to make a few notes with regard to dimensions if you're dealing with floor to ceiling heights, if it's not communicated with something to bear that communicates scale. So in other words, if you don't have like a figure beside it. But furniture, props, and other little bits and pieces within that environment, and an image is going to communicate an awful lot of information very, very quickly. It can communicate where there are trees and bushes, rivers, waterfalls. Now, one of the most common things to do in Dungeons and Dragons, and also when it comes to any kind of exploration, is to involve a waterfall, because every tramp you've ever gone on has a waterfall at the end. Well, that's been my experience anyway. But it is certainly a good way of operating. You put something there that's sort of fantastic and draws the player in. And if it draws the player in, you're drawing in their character, right? So things like smells and sounds and temperature still will need some sort of description. And you might need to write some notes, but there are usually tips within an image to give you an idea of how to communicate that kind of information if you need to. It's not always going to be required, but sometimes the picture itself communicates some of that information, so you don't have to worry about it. The great thing about an image and a picture is that it communicates nothing about treasure. There might be something that is completely visible, like some golden statues or a treasure hoard of some kind. But if there are treasures that you don't want to present to the players, often an image of a place will hide that. It won't necessarily reveal secret doors or where traps are. These are all essentially still hidden, and so therefore it doesn't break up your game, particularly if you want to keep them for later. And I can totally understand if you want to do something like that. It's going to showing the picture to the player is really important. So how do I do that? Because I don't have all that electronic stuff, Fred. Well, you can do a printout. Well, I don't have enough money to print out from my printer. I don't have the ink. I don't have the paper. I can't do that. That's not going to work. I can't use an image at my table. Not going to be practical. Or a laptop, if you have a laptop, great. A tablet, if you have a tablet. I used to use a tablet myself, where I would simply have an image, whole series of images on my tablet, flip it around, show it to my players, and then flip it back. It's a really good technique. But one of the things I think a lot of dungeon masters forget in terms of their tool set is they usually have a smartphone. So flip that smartphone around. Put the images on the smartphone. You can use the smartphone and describe what is in the image on the smartphone, and then just hand the smartphone to the players so they can have a look at the picture. Or you can do a quick description, like one sentence, and then go straight into that. So it's a great time saver. Using an image is a fantastic way of communicating a fantastic location or a location in your adventure without having to put in a lot of extra work. Now, if you do want to put in a lot of work, that's fine. But there are ways of getting around that. And there's some great people out there who've done a lot of work in terms of giving you tools that you can use. And I'm going to provide you with a couple of suggestions, but I'm also going to point you in the direction of what I consider to be one of the masters of being the lazy dungeon master. And we know who I'm talking about, okay? You know who I'm talking about. That has definitely got to be Sly Flourish. Sly Flourish has put out a book called Fantastic Locations. Now you can purchase this off Amazon, off his website, anything like that, and it has 20 sample locations that you can use. They're all fantastic in nature. He presents some really good ideas there, and it's broken down in such a way that it's not going to require you to do a lot of work, which is good. He's also put out a book called Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, and I'm sure more than a few of you are familiar with Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, or the first one he did, which was just called The Lazy Dungeon Master. Now there are a number of tips that Mike Shell or Sly Flourish provides in terms of how to create your fantastic location. And I would say it is broken down into 4 basic ideas. The first one being, give it an interesting name. Make it old and ancient. One of the easiest ways to make our location really, really exciting for players is to make it old and ancient. Make it big. Size matters. That, you know, the saying that size matters came up, I think, with the old Godzilla movie that came out years ago that wasn't very good. But size does matter here. So making things big. And then you've got to ask yourself the question, what was it used for in the past? Has it been repurposed, or does it have the same purpose that it was designed for originally? So those are some of the aspects in terms of creating your fantastic location. Now I know what you're thinking, but Fred, you know, that's all very well, but I'm not very good at coming out with really fantastic locations. So where and how am I going to achieve this? Whereabouts can I go to make that work? Well, I want you to remember there are so many resources out there. You have access to the internet now, so you can use fantasy art. There's lots and lots of Dungeons and Dragons based fantasy art out there. So have a look around. You'll find more than a bit of it is actually in Magic the Gathering is a great place to go to get information with regard to this. So if you're worried about getting information and images and pictures and so forth, those are the places to go. Movies, grab a still off a movie. Sometimes that's certainly going to give you a fantastic image that will draw your players in and excite them. Pinterest, Google search. I've found many of my images off there. And don't forget that there are also books, even a lot of popular pop art has some pretty fantastic images that you can use. And one of the best places to go for images is actually real world places. So a photo of a real world location, you can use those. They do not have to be drawn artwork. They can be a location that actually exists that somebody has actually just photographed. And you're going to find truckloads of those. It's very, very easy to find that sort of stuff. I'm hoping that this has given you a couple of ideas and tools. This is a technique that I use to really speed up the process of dungeon mastering for myself. It made it a lot easier for me to actually communicate to people what I wanted fastly, in a fast way and in an accurate way without having to do a lot of work. And often we just don't have the time or the ability to do the sorts of things we would like to be able to do. So we've got to go and use a different technique. And this is one way of doing it. So yes, it's lazy, but it's still a good one. Now I have a whole bunch of videos developed around being a lazy dungeon master. And I want you to go down into the description. You'll find links, most of them are affiliate links, that will allow you to access a lot of those techniques that Sly Flourish has talked about. I have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters, which you're welcome to go and check out. I have a Patreon page where you can support the channel, so I keep doing videos like this. I have affiliate links, as I said. I also have a merchandise shelf if you want to go and check that stuff out. And make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos, and I do a lot of videos. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. I don't know where my 20 is though. It's gone. It's vanished. Where did it go?